So about a month ago, I seen this study, and it's across Europe, and it said that 85% of people's incomes nowadays, weekly income, pretty much goes towards the rent in a lot of cases. Particularly for young people, it's 85% or so when they live in accommodation. For example, 85% of their income goes towards rent in Europe. It's insane, and particularly in Ireland, more than any other country it is. And it raises the question, particularly for young people, not so much for elderly people, but can they save? Years ago, you used to get, and I think the government here are talking about bringing it back in, where you had, if you had loads of money in your bank account, if you had savings in your bank account, you would get interest in for it. I do think that's valuable too for people if they save up, if they have a few bob, to get interest on the of savings, etc., to get a bit extra, particularly for young people, because it's impossible now. I'm sure you would agree, for even just the only person, not even for the young people, it's impossible now to make ends meet because things are so expensive. It comes to the cost of living, etc. So expensive, and young people have it very hard. And I know people would say, "Oh, back in my day, we used to walk to the from here to Timbuktu." But this is the thing; it's got very hard, and even if you had a good paying job, etc., it's still not easy. Nowadays, things have just got too expensive. It's got far too expensive. Years ago, things were manageable. Things could happen. Take for example, just use another example in the United States at the moment. It's the worst situation ever in terms of housing, etc. Literally, it was nearly better in the 50s when there was literally in the 50s when people had little to no money. It was better. People could afford to get their house and pay a mortgage, etc. And a reasonable wage. Nowadays, it's totally insane. Nobody could do it. And that's just the way it's gone in life. Things got too expensive for the only person, particularly for the young people. And it's all part of a wider agenda, of course, the World Economic Forum's agenda. You own nothing and be happy about it. That's pretty much their agenda because there's no other explanation on why things are so expensive. But they watch their own nothing and be happy about it. But I do think it's important that people make savings, of course, because we never know what can happen the next day or tomorrow. And it's, of course, it's important to have savings. But again, at the end of the day, when you pay an 85% of your income towards the rent, etc. In the 70s, it probably would have been only, thinking about it, it probably would have been only 10%, 15% at most. But it's absolutely insane that in them few years, about 40 years, maybe even 30 years, that it's gone up to 85%. It's absolute daylight robbery in a lot of cases, what's happening. And that's to be generally honest with. But it's the fact of the matter people can't make any savings because when they do get a pay increase, say for example their job, the government takes their share. They take and then obviously now they're taking pensions. They're taking the money from the pensions, and then you pay your rent, you pay your electricity bill, you pay maybe for your car, your tax, your insurance, NCT, your road tax, the whole shebang, new tires, etc. You don't have much left, and then you pay your property. Maybe if you had, not even property tax, even if you had bin charges, etc. You have very little left at the end of the week. Let's put that way, and particularly to save up and to put a bit aside, maybe for a holiday or not even for a holiday, just to save for a rainy day if you needed it. People can't really do that. Years ago, people could disposable income, but disposable income pretty much doesn't exist in Ireland anymore because people have just been taxed the hell into back. And that's pretty much what's happening. But we should try and make it easier for people to save. And how you do that is try and make things more affordable. But again, it's all part of the agenda, as I say. It's not just it's a thing that's happening. It's all designed pretty much in a way. Because it couldn't be all just a coincidence, especially because it's never been this bad, as I say, in a lot of cases. Like, even throughout in the worst times of the country, it never was as expensive as now. It's madness to say. Like, literally, the country had no money in the 60s and things were more affordable than they are today. But money went forward, things went forward. You could buy a big load of stuff for, a few bob. Nowadays, you can't, if you went in €50 to the shop, you wouldn't see what you bought, basically. Years ago, you could buy the whole shop nearly for €50. And things were reasonably priced, etc. Nowadays, it's just outrageous, extortionate, to be totally honest. It's all a scam, to be totally. The majority of this country is a scam anyway. But I do think it's important that we try and encourage people, of course, to save up whatever they can, of course. But also, we should bring back, and I hope the government does bring it back. But for whose benefit? That's what you have to ask the next question, for the common good, as they say. But what's the common good? But I do think it would be good to bring it back for young people to encourage them to save, etc. Because again, we just don't know what can happen to us tomorrow or next week. To our children, never God forbid. Just that's the thing about life. It's important to have a few bob saved up as an emergency. God forbid if something did happen. But anyway, let me know what you think. Subscribe for more. And do you ever save up? Just actually be interested to know, does people ever put, say for example, I often heard of people putting in €10 or something like that into the credit union. I know actually one person who puts €10 a week into the credit union, but sure, look at, I suppose it all adds up at the end of the year. I suppose €10 here and a €10 there.
But at the end of the day, it wouldn't be much of a difference. Maybe an extra 1,000. But I suppose people would say an extra 1,000 is better than nothing. I suppose. But at the end of the day, too, if you wanted to, do something with that money, you pretty much couldn't, because if you put €10 aside every week, it's not much in the grand scheme of things. But anyway, let me know what you think. Subscribe for more, and bye.